She sobbed in the bathroom for the third time that week. I stood just outside the door, pretending to check emails, listening to the hollow sound of her crying echoing off tile. She hadn't come out for 20 minutes. When she finally did, her face was red, mascara blurred into the corners of her eyes. She leaned into me like a woman falling through water, and whispered, "I can't keep doing this. I thought this month felt different." I held her, as I always did, feeling her shake in my arms. I told her it was okay, that we'd keep trying. I said all the right things, but something inside me was already splintering. Not because I didn't believe her pain, but because a strange numbness had crept in, a distance I couldn't name yet. Maybe it was the way she didn't meet my eyes, or how quickly the tears stopped when her phone vibrated. But I kissed her forehead and said, "We'll figure it out." And I meant it. That was Thursday. Friday morning, I was packing for a 2-day work trip. She was still asleep, wrapped in the sheets like she'd drowned in them. I didn't want to wake her. My charger was missing and I figured she'd borrowed it again. Her gym bag was by the front door, the zipper slightly open. I knelt to check the side pocket. That's when I saw the envelope. White, thick, tucked deep between a protein bar and her ankle weights. I don't know why I pulled it out. It wasn't labeled on the outside, just the name of a women's clinic I recognized from our past fertility consultations. My chest tightened. I wasn't snooping, not exactly. But when I opened it and slid the contents out, the world stopped moving for a moment. An ultrasound printout, black and gray, hazy with that unmistakable shape. Her full name was printed in the upper left. A due date projection. The scan was dated 12 days ago. 12 days. I stared at it for a full minute before slipping it back in and rezipping the bag like nothing had happened. My hands felt disconnected from my body. I stood slowly, walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, and sat at the counter without moving. 12 days ago, she told me her hormone levels were off again. She'd taken 2 pregnancy tests that week and cried both times when they came back negative. We hadn't been due it for at least 5 weeks. Not since she said she was too emotional, and not in the right headspace. I hadn't questioned it. I respected her. I trusted her. I trusted her. She came downstairs 40 minutes later, yawning, stretching like nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek and said she hoped the hotel wouldn't be another one of those sterile chain places. "I packed you protein bars in your bag," she added. "The good ones." I smiled, thanked her. My heart was a grenade, already primed, and she was handing me protein bars. On the drive to the airport, I kept running the numbers. We had visited a clinic back in January. The doctors said we were both viable, whatever that meant. The problem wasn't medical. It was just timing. "Keep trying," they said. "Track ovulation. Reduce stress." We downloaded apps. We lit candles. We made charts. And now there was an ultrasound. She had told me just 2 nights ago that she felt broken. That maybe we weren't meant to have a family. She said it through tears, while I rubbed her back and promised we weren't giving up. And all the while, this printout had been in her bag. The plane took off, and I stared out the window into the clouds. My reflection in the plexiglass looked older than I remembered. I didn't know who the father was, but I knew it wasn't me. By the time I landed in Denver, the numbness had hardened into something sharper. Not rage, not yet. Just a cold, clear focus. I wasn't going to confront her. Not until I understood what I was confronting. She texted around noon. "Hope the flight was okay. I miss you already. Let me know when you get to the hotel." I stared at the message for a few seconds before responding. "Just got in. Airport chaos. I'll call you tonight. Love you." It felt like lying. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was strategy. I didn't know the difference anymore. The hotel room was sterile, beige and safe, just like she had joked. I dropped my bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and took out a yellow legal pad I always traveled with. I wrote a single word at the top, timeline. I started from memory. When was the last time we'd actually tried? March 4th. I remembered because she had lit candles and played that playlist we made during our honeymoon. I'd thought it meant she was feeling hopeful again. March 4th. The ultrasound was dated April 2nd. That gap was too wide. I wrote it in red. Then I went through my emails, checking for flight receipts and hotel stays. I wasn't home March 10th through the 14th, San Diego conference. That was the week she claimed she'd had a bad flu. I called her every night, and she'd sounded distant, claimed it was the meds. That was 2.5 weeks before the ultrasound. I started circling dates, laying them over memories, her shifting moods, the vague excuses. She'd started pulling away in early March. Less physical. Always tired. Snapping one moment, quiet the next. I'd chalked it up to hormone treatments. But now, that explanation felt too clean. That night, we FaceTimed. Madeline was wearing one of my old t-shirts, hair up, eyes shadowed with fatigue. She looked soft, familiar, like nothing had cracked yet. She smiled faintly through the screen. "How's Denver?" she asked. "Your coworkers behaving?" "More or less," I said. She studied me a second longer. "You look like you haven't slept." I shrugged. "Yeah. It's the altitude." She smiled gently. "Come home soon." I wanted to ask, "Why did you hide it in your gym bag?" Instead, I said, "Soon." After the call, I sat in the dark with the screen still glowing beside me. I thought about the ultrasound again, the shape, the faint curve of what was growing inside her. I felt sick, but not in a dramatic, movie scene way. More like I'd been poisoned slowly, and the symptoms were only now setting in. Saturday morning, I started digging again. She left her browser logged in on our home laptop, and I remembered the password. She hadn't changed it in years. I didn't want to violate her privacy. I wanted to verify what I already suspected. There's a difference. In her Google Maps history, I found a location ping on March 27th. A women's health clinic, not the one we had visited together. Different side of the city. I noted the address. She told me she had brunch with a friend that day, Emily. I remembered it because she'd come home with a shopping bag and said Emily had helped her pick out a new sweater. She even showed it to me. Pink. Tag still on. Now I wondered if that sweater was just camouflage. Back in town Monday morning, I told her I was working late and left early. Instead, I drove across town and parked 2 blocks from the clinic. It was modest, discreet. A name that sounded more like a spa than a medical center. I went inside and pretended I was there to pick up brochures for my partner. The receptionist handed me a pamphlet about prenatal vitamins and early care guidelines. Her voice was cheerful. I wanted to throw the paperweight on the counter straight through the window. Instead, I said thank you and left. I walked the block twice, checking nearby businesses. One was a coffee shop with a security camera aimed at the street. I went inside, ordered a black coffee, and made conversation with the young guy behind the counter. "Hey, weird question," I said, acting casual. "I think my wife might have left her phone outside here last week. Any chance you keep old security footage?" He hesitated, unsure. "Not usually, but the manager might. I'd really appreciate it. It was important stuff, contacts, travel docs. She thinks she dropped it between here and the clinic next door." He nodded. "Hang tight." 10 minutes later, he came back with his manager, older guy, glasses, skeptical but not unkind. I repeated the story, tossed in a few details about my wife being stressed, how we're expecting, how important it was. He agreed to let me check their exterior camera from that week. March 27th. I scanned through 20 minutes of grainy footage. And there she was, 11:08 a.m. She walked down the sidewalk alone. But 5 minutes later, a man joined her. Tall, shaved head, dark jacket. She smiled when she saw him, hugged him. They didn't go inside the clinic. They turned and walked across the street, out of frame. I froze the footage. The man looked vaguely familiar. I screenshot the frame with my phone before the manager could object. "Thanks again," I said, dropping a 20 in the tip jar. Back in my car, I zoomed in. And then it hit me. I didn't know the man's name yet, but I'd seen that face once, 3 years ago. On a pitch deck during a startup meeting. He had been a rival, not a friend. The kind of guy who'd smile while taking your chair. My wife had told me he was trash. That he'd tanked his last company, scammed investors, played dirty. She had said I was better off not working with someone like him. Now I was wondering just how long she'd been protecting him. The man's name was Wyatt Crane. I hadn't thought about him in years, not since the failed seed round that almost cost me my first business. He'd been slick, always pitching faster than he thought, always smiling like he had a secret. When our teams overlapped briefly during a product merger, he nearly wrecked the deal. He ghosted my team 2 days before launch and vanished. No follow-up, no explanation. Later I heard whispers, misused funds, a quiet investor lawsuit, NDAs. My wife had hated him, said he gave her the creeps. She'd been the one to push hardest against the partnership. "He's a parasite," she'd said. You don't build with people like that. I remember nodding, trusting her judgment, cutting ties. Now he was in the security footage, smiling at her like an old habit. She hugged him like someone she wasn't ashamed to know. That night I didn't sleep. At breakfast the next morning, she asked if I wanted to go see her parents that weekend. I told her I had meetings. She didn't press. While she was upstairs folding laundry, I stepped into her car in the garage and started checking the center console. It was invasive. I knew it. I didn't care. She'd invaded worse. The glove box had a few expired insurance cards and a notebook with workout plans, dates, sets, reps, nothing strange. Until I found the parking garage stub. Dated March 27th, same date as the clinic visit. It was stamped with the name of a mixed-use tower across the street from the clinic. Offices, apartments, a private gym. I googled the building, and sure enough, Wyatt Crane was listed as operating a consultancy out of the 14th floor. I stared at the listing like it might change if I blinked. So she'd gone to see him. Not for coffee. Not by accident. She'd parked there, gone upstairs, met him, and later walked out with him on camera, smiling. And she'd come home that day with a pink sweater and a story about brunch with Emily. I texted Emily that afternoon. Hey, was wondering which brunch spot you and Mads went to on the 27th? She said it was new, wanted to check it out. It took 4 minutes. Hey, we didn't do brunch that week. I had COVID, was stuck at home. She didn't tell you? I stared at the screen. My vision tunneled. No worries. Must have been a different day. Hope you're feeling better. I put my phone down and just sat there. She hadn't even covered the lie with enough detail to hold weight. She'd used a sick friend as a prop. That's how little she thought I'd question it. That night we sat on the couch watching some crime documentary. She tucked her feet under me. Her head rested on my shoulder. She laughed at some sarcastic comment the detective made. I nodded along, barely breathing. I remember the smell of her shampoo. I remember the way she absent-mindedly rubbed my arm like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't walked across a city street with a man she swore she despised. Like she wasn't carrying a secret just beneath her skin, small and silent and growing. She caught me staring once. What? She asked, smiling. I smiled back. Nothing. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking through her, through the life we had built, the timelines we had scripted, the dreams we'd wrapped around a future that now felt like someone else's. The next morning, I called a contact, Lance, a guy who owed me a favor. He did freelance work pulling civil records and background checks for lawyers. I gave him Wyatt's name and the building address. Told him I needed anything he could find, lease agreements, mail logs, visitor entries. You think he's dirty again? Lance asked. I paused. I think he never stopped. While I waited for results, I played the husband role like nothing was wrong. Dinners, walks, talking about new furniture. She even suggested we look into another fertility consultation. Just to be sure. I told her I'd think about it. She beamed like I'd handed her a ring. Later that night, while she showered, I stood in our bedroom staring at the ultrasound photo I had carefully taken from the gym bag and hidden in my sock drawer. I held it by the edge like it might burn me. I thought about timelines, about lies, about skin pressed against skin behind doors I'd never see. And in that moment, I realized something simple, devastating, and permanent. Whatever came next, whatever else I uncovered, there was no going back. The next afternoon, Lance called. His voice had that same dry, clipped tone he always used when he was about to drop something ugly. You sitting down? He asked. I braced myself. Just give it to me. He didn't pause. Crane's not leasing an office on the 14th floor. That address? It's residential. I paused. You mean he's living there? No. His name's not on the lease. I didn't say anything. The tenant is Madeline Crane. My mouth went dry. Repeat that. Your wife, he said. She signed the lease mid-February. 6-month term, luxury apartment. Lease name, Madeline Crane. I double-checked the signature. Matches your mortgage forms. She used her maiden name. She rented an apartment 2 floors beneath him, and she never told me. I hung up without a word. She wasn't just meeting him. She had created a second life, down to the address. While we were charting cycles and debating ovulation windows, she was picking out furniture for an apartment I didn't know existed. The next hour was a haze. I drove without thinking. I ended up in the parking lot of that same tower, 14th and Clay. I sat across from it, watching the mirrored glass shimmer in the late sun. People walked in and out, carrying yoga mats, dry-cleaned suits, reusable bags. I stared at the front doors and pictured her walking through them, keys in hand, smiling at the doorman, maybe carrying groceries or some new kitchen gadget I never saw in our own house. There was a chance, small, pathetic, grasping, that she'd use the apartment for work, a writing retreat, a studio, a place to breathe. But I already knew the truth. I went home and waited for her to leave for yoga that evening. Then I unlocked her laptop and went into the Notes app. She always left it open, always organized her life in little bullet points and lists. Grocery runs, appointment reminders, gift ideas. And there it was, a note titled, P3 Grocery/Extras. My stomach sank. The apartment tower was called Pavilion 3. The list included brand names I didn't recognize, artisan soap, imported tea, some niche protein powder we never bought. The kind of items you keep stocked where you live, not where you pretend. There was another list underneath. WKY, neutral tone jacket, frames for hallway, extra toothbrush. A man's name disguised as initials. She was shopping for his hallway. I closed the laptop and walked out of the house. I needed air. I needed space that hadn't been lied into. I ended up at my sister's place on the edge of town. I hadn't told her anything yet, but she saw something in my face and said, "Want to sit outside?" We drank 2 beers in silence on her back porch, the sky dimming into slate. I gave her a stripped-down version, told her I'd found something, that I was still piecing it together. My sister studied me for a long moment, her voice calm but steady. "You're not going to lose your mind over this, right?" I shook my head. "No. That's not how I work." She tilted the bottle toward me, eyes narrowed. "You're going to burn them both down, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Just looked out at the darkening yard. She didn't ask again. That night, I slept on her couch, fully dressed. I dreamed about things collapsing in reverse, ultrasound prints folding back into envelopes, doors unslamming, lies unspoken. But when I woke up, the truth was still there, waiting like a loaded gun. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney and asked how fast someone could be served papers without stepping foot inside a courtroom. Then I called a locksmith. I didn't go for drama. That was never my instinct. I went for precision. The locksmith came on Thursday morning, right after she left for her usual spin class. I had already confirmed the session start time on the studio's website. It gave me a 45-minute window. Plenty. He replaced the front lock without question. I didn't ask for a second key. By the time she came home, I was waiting in the kitchen, a manila folder on the table in front of me. A second one in my car, labeled and sealed, waiting to be handed to the process server I had scheduled for 5 p.m. sharp. The door jiggled twice, then silence. A pause. Then her knock. I waited a beat before opening it. She stood in the doorway, still in her Lululemon gear, sweat beading along her forehead. Her brow creased, breath catching just slightly, confused. "The lock, what happened?" Madeline asked, letting out a nervous laugh. I didn't smile. "I had it changed." Her smile faltered. "Why?" I stepped aside and motioned toward the table. "Let's talk." She walked past me slowly, suddenly alert. The same way a deer walks into an unfamiliar clearing. She sat, folded her hands. "You're scaring me a little." "Good." I opened the folder and slid out the ultrasound photo, the grocery list titled P3, and a printed lease agreement Lance had pulled for me. Her name in bold. Her signature, dated February 13th. For a moment, she just stared at the papers like they were in a foreign language. Then, "Where did you get these?" "I've had them for a while." Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. A flicker of calculation passed over her face, and she dropped her gaze. No denial. Just silence. "Is it Wyatt's?" I asked. Still nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "It's not that simple. Don't insult me." She flinched, and I hated that part of me still hurt seeing it. She had spent months convincing me she was broken, unworthy, barren. She let me grieve beside her, shoulder to shoulder. And she used that grief like camouflage. "I was going to tell you," Madeline said finally, voice shaking. I didn't move. "When?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I was waiting for the right time." I met her eyes steady. "There is no right time to admit this. There's only before it's too late. And you passed that line weeks ago." She buried her face in her hands. "I was scared." I leaned forward. "You weren't scared when you signed the lease. You weren't scared when you met him outside the clinic. You weren't scared when you came home that night and cried on my shoulder. Please, she said. Don't make this worse than it already is. I stood. This is me making it better, for myself. She looked up then, mascara streaking again, but this time I didn't move to help her. I'd spent too many nights believing tears were truth. Now I saw them for what they were, tools. I'm filing today, I said. You'll be served within the hour. The property division is clean. You can keep the car. I already moved my shares to a separate trust. Don't try to come after them. You'll lose. She blinked rapidly. I never wanted to hurt you. That's the problem, I said, voice steady. You wanted everything. And you thought you could have it without cost. She reached across the table, and I stepped back. That hurt more than I thought it would. Her hand hovered in the air for a moment before falling to her lap. I was lost, Madeline said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything between us became heavy. I didn't blink. Then you should have said that before you signed a lease under your maiden name, 2 floors beneath the man you were sleeping with. She couldn't even look at me. I walked to the door and opened it. She followed slowly, like someone heading to a sentence. Just before stepping out, she turned and whispered, "What happens now? You live with your choices. I live with the truth." I closed the door behind her before she could answer. 5 minutes later, the process server confirmed delivery. She'd answered the door still holding the folder. The man said she didn't look surprised. I sat in the silence of the house for a long time after that, listening to nothing, feeling everything. I didn't cry. Not then. The grieving had already happened, quietly, slowly. Inside every moment I watched her lie and pretended I believed her. What came next wasn't grief. It was war. The first shockwave hit that Sunday. Her sister called me, shaky, stumbling through small talk. Then she asked, "Is it true?" She'd heard something from their mother, who had heard from Madeline in a broken, breathless call. I didn't confirm the story. I didn't deny it either. I said, "She knows what she did." Her sister went quiet. I heard something like regret in her voice when she said, "She always said you were the one stable thing in her life." I hung up without answering. Let them all draw their own conclusions. I had the receipts. The next week became a chessboard of legal filings and quiet reputation preservation. I filed the petition with documentation already submitted. Lance's records, the lease agreement, the fake alibi notes, the clinic confirmation. My lawyer was sharp, aggressive when needed, surgical otherwise. He smiled at me after the first meeting and said, "This is what we call ironclad." She hadn't filed any response yet. I'd locked the joint account the morning after our confrontation. Transferred my personal accounts to new institutions. She tried to charge a boutique furniture piece to my card 2 days later. It declined. She texted me. I didn't realize the card was frozen. I didn't respond. My silence wasn't rage. It was control. She moved into the Pavilion 3 unit full-time. I knew because she stopped coming back to the house. I sent her attorney a formal notice giving her 10 days to retrieve her remaining belongings. After that, I would consider them abandoned. Her lawyer wrote back trying to stall. My lawyer sent back a time-stamped log of access code changes. No negotiation. Then came the friends. People you think are mutual start revealing their weight. Some reached out quietly, texts of support, veiled questions. A few stopped showing up altogether. I didn't chase them. But the worst blow came from someone I hadn't expected, Derek. He'd been my friend for over a decade. College roommate. Best man at our wedding. I called him, told him the story, not all of it, but enough. He hesitated on the phone. "Yeah, I heard. Wyatt's been around." I didn't want to get in the middle. "You knew?" I asked. I didn't know. But I saw them once. A couple months ago. At this gallery thing downtown. I thought maybe it was work stuff. "You didn't think to tell me?" He went quiet. Then, I didn't want to get involved. That was the last time we spoke. I sent him a one-line text that night. "You picked your middle. Stay there." 2 weeks after the papers were filed, I walked into our bedroom, my bedroom now, and pulled the last picture of us off the wall. One from a vineyard trip 2 summers ago. We were smiling, sunglasses crooked, arms looped tight. I remember thinking she looked peaceful that day. I remember how much I believed it. There was dust on the back of the frame. I wiped it off before dropping it in the donation box. I kept the ultrasound, not because I wanted to remember what she did, but because I needed to remember how close I came to becoming something I never agreed to be. A placeholder, A fallback plan. A convenient lie. The house felt colder now, quieter. But the silence was clean. There were no echoes of false comfort, no performances over dinner, no carefully staged sadness. Just air, walls, space, and something else, clarity. It started with a knock at the office. Not my house, my actual office, the small suite I leased 6 months earlier to separate work from the weight of home. I was finalizing supplier contracts when the receptionist buzzed me. "There's someone here asking for you. Says it's personal." I almost told her to send them away. But something made me say, "Send them in." The door opened, and in walked Wyatt Crane. Clean-shaved, tailored jacket, that same cocksure grin. Except this time, it faltered the moment our eyes met. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I gestured at the empty chair like it was a trap. He sat anyway. "I figured this was coming," I said. He gave a thin smile. "No, you didn't." I didn't respond. He looked around the office like he was evaluating it. "Nice setup. I heard about the funding. Congrats." Cut the preamble. His jaw shifted slightly. Then he leaned forward. "She's trying to put it on me," he said. "Legally. She's saying I pressured her. I just got served with a restraining order request." That got my attention. I leaned forward slightly. "She what?" Wyatt shifted in his chair, his voice low and tight. "She's claiming emotional coercion. Saying she wasn't in a state to give clear consent. She's pulling therapy records, twisting things to fit her version." I stared at him, not with sympathy, but with something colder. "Calculation?" "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because if she pulls it off," Wyatt said, "she can spin the entire situation. Make it look like this wasn't just some mistake, it was something done to her. And if that sticks, there's a door that opens. A dangerous one." I narrowed my eyes. "What door?" "She'll argue you were the one she always intended to build that future with," he said, each word measured. "Even if I was involved." My stomach went still. "She's setting the stage for a claim of paternal responsibility," he continued. "You were married. You were trying. She can point to your emails, texts about fertility, shared treatment costs. She'll claim you agreed to parenthood, regardless of biology. That was strategy. Brutal, calculated strategy. She's not going to stop," Wyatt said. "She's not after me anymore. She's after the life you gave her. You. The house. The security. The stability." I sat there, breathing slowly, feeling every word sink into place like weights tied to my ankles. "You think I don't deserve this," he added, quieter now. "You're probably right." I stood. "You'll get what you deserve. Just not from me." He looked up. "So what do we do?" I met his eyes. "We don't do anything. I'm not on your side." I walked to the door and opened it. "But thanks for the warning." He stood, nodded once, and walked out. The moment the door shut, I was already calling my lawyer. We drafted a preemptive declaration of non-paternity and filed it with the court within 48 hours. We submitted a timeline of my travel, proof of lack of contact during conception, and the full legal argument. There was no intended parenthood agreement, no adoption plan, no declaration, just lies. 3 weeks later, her attorney responded, carefully worded, vague, designed to delay. But she'd shown her hand. She hadn't just betrayed me. She was preparing to rewrite the narrative. I wasn't just her ex. I was the last stable thing she could attach her crumbling story to. She didn't want me back. She wanted my name on paper, beneath responsibilities I never signed up for. So I made it public. Through quiet legal channels, I authorized the release of a statement via my lawyer to mutual business partners and contacts. Short, emotionless, factual. Due to ongoing legal misrepresentation by a former spouse, I am confirming that I am not, and have never been, the biological or legal father of her pregnancy. Any claims to the contrary will be treated as defamation. No drama. Just truth. The kind that's legally binding. The fallout was swift. Her reputation cracked. Her social presence went quiet. A few friends tried to spin it, but facts don't bend forever. The final blow came from her job, corporate PR. They placed her on leave. Too risky. Too messy. And just like that, the second life she tried to build came down, room by room. I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast or gloat or post some cryptic quote about truth winning. I just sat in my office, looking out at the city, breathing air that finally belonged to me.